Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Swallowed Star based on novel. So let's start. Right before him, he could see countless paths that planets and worlds were once found operational, paths outlined by traces of life forces attracted by life planets. His was already a perfect life structure diagram. When compared to a sector beast's life structure diagram, they are poles apart, yet connected somehow. Luo Feng stood in outer space, in the area surrounding Earth, deep in thought. His other body, sustained by godly power and left in the region of the black-striped stone pillar, was laboriously pondering under an environment where time acceleration was maintained at 10 million times. Miraculous brightness was flashing across Luo Feng's mind as though he was about to be enlightened. Originally, he had found the study of universe masters and true gods to have nothing in common with the study of sector beasts. Yet now, between these two schools of life diagrams, which had previously seemed so incongruous with one another, Luo Feng seemed to have found their common ground. A single picture could be judged differently by different people. Considering the past, when looking at these life structure diagrams, Luo Feng might have felt that they were simply opposites of one another. There was no other perspective from which he could rethink the situation. But at the moment, after seeing the diagrams from a different point of view, Luo Feng managed to find a commonality between these two endlessly complicated life structure diagrams. Life structure. Luo Feng stretched out his right palm. His palm was constituted of countless bouts of godly power, and all of them contained soul imprints. Naturally, he was so well informed that he had everything under control. He was also able to analyze it all in the most detailed manner. Combination. With his conscious mind, Luo Feng gave his order, and his life structure started to change. He had achieved 89,999 times life gene level, which already considered to be the ultimate perfection for a life structure diagram. But at that moment, Luo Feng was like a superb sage. With just a few strokes, he could make a picture come alive. Similarly, his changes to the life structure diagram were very simple. Many detailed structures were still the same as they had been, but the overall framework underwent a peculiar change. Also, following the changes in life structure diagrams, Luo Feng was gaining a clearer grasp of the commonality between the school of universe masters, true gods, and true gods of void space, and the school of sector beasts. The process of alteration in the overall framework of Luo Feng's life structure diagram seemed simple. Yet suddenly, an extremely small portion of the complex life structure diagram suddenly fell apart like a melon dropping from its branch upon ripening. Then it very rapidly started to detach itself from the entire life structure diagram. This was not within Luo Feng's control, but rather, something like a natural reaction. When changes were happening to Luo Feng, parts of his life structure diagram automatically started to show signs of detachment. What? Luo Feng was shocked. But the thought of stopping these things never crossed his mind. Instead, he watched on. The extremely small parts of his life structure diagram that were rapidly detached were also going through changes internally. The internal structure seemed to be subjected to a domino effect, where the first change sparked the start of a chain reaction. From a structure diagram that Luo Feng could understand to something else, it transformed rapidly into another structure diagram that was so mystical that even Luo Feng could no longer comprehend. Buzz. The extremely small portion of life amazingly took on the form of a naked Luo Feng, seated cross-legged with a smile on his face. The moment this extremely small portion of the life structure diagram transformed into a naked Luo Feng, the change extended to the other parts of this life structure diagram. Suddenly, many Luo Fengs started to appear. There might be a Luo Feng roaring in anger, or a Luo Feng with a warrior's pose, or a standing Luo Feng who was deep in thought, or a Luo Feng curled up in bed, or a Luo Feng deep in slumber, or a Luo Feng laughing out loud. All manners of appearances, one by one, were being born. To describe it all would have taken an eternity, but all these chain reactions happened in the blink of an eye. Luo Feng's entire life structure diagram had suddenly transformed into 100,000 spots of light, and every spot was a miniature, naked Luo Feng. These 100,000 miniature Luo Fengs, though not physically connected to one another, were still indistinctly associated. Putting all of them together would form Luo Feng's life structure diagram. 100,000 light spots. Even though Luo Feng was the creator, he had never expected to see such a chain reaction happening when he reorganized his life structure diagram. Earlier, when he had been analyzing the sector beast, the life structure diagram of a sector beast had also been comprised of 100,000 spots of light, and every one was a miniature sector beast. Each miniature sector beast itself was the most complex life structure diagram possible. At this moment, it was likewise for Luo Feng. His life structure diagram was also made up of 100,000 spots of light, with each one being a naked Luo Feng. Each miniature Luo Feng also contained an extremely complex life structure diagram. But, of course, there was a difference between the miniature Luo Feng and the miniature sector beast. Even Luo Feng himself felt that he was more profound than the sector beast. 100,000 spots of light were coming into existence successively. Such a chain reaction seemed to indicate that everything would fall into place. It appeared that success was near at hand. After the first trace of godly power on Luo Feng's right palm changed, it was as though the process was contagious. There was no need for Luo Feng to give another command. Right away, the change in godly power started to spread rapidly. It was like a drop of black ink spreading out rapidly in water. From Luo Feng's arm, a trace of golden light rapidly started to emerge. Shortly after, this golden light spread out and began filling his surroundings like crazy. Luo Feng's palm very quickly became a hand that radiated an endless, dazzling, golden light which, at the same time, moved on to spread through his entire body. Because the godly powers he had before and after the changes all contained Luo Feng's life imprints, under some guidance, this much more superior life structure diagram, which had attained ultimate perfection, had a deadly attraction for other godly powers. It was just like how a magnet would attract other metallic elements. It naturally attracted the other godly powers around it and caused them to change in a most unrestrained manner. In less than 5 seconds, Luo Feng's entire body, including his hair, was radiating golden light. At the very moment the transformation of his godly body reached the point of completion, it was as though there was a nuclear fusion, as though a massive explosion had gone off within the solar system. The power released was 10 million times greater than the power produced when a universe master self-destructed. The moment Luo Feng's godly body was approaching the final stage of transformation, his entire body naturally released an outburst of 1 trillion light rays. 1 trillion light rays, shining upon 1 trillion light years. The golden light that surged out of Luo Feng's godly body was not subjected to any restrictions. Therefore the speed at which it traveled at was comparable to teleportation. In an instant, it was shining upon the entire solar system. Then it moved on to shine upon Milky Way Holy Land, which was not far away, then over to the entire Milky Way galaxy, and then to the entire Ganwu universe. This golden light was advancing at top speed, soundlessly transcending time and space. It was unstoppable. 1 trillion lights penetrated through the human territory to shine upon territories of other races like the bugs, the automatons, and the demons. It then reached out further to shine upon even the most deserted and darkest regions of the primal universe, where no life was able to survive. At that very moment, even the will power of the universe origin would not have been able to exert any influence over the might of this golden light. 1 trillion lights finally penetrated through the membrane walls of the entire primal universe, charging toward the endless, chaotic universe ocean. At that moment, Luo Feng was the very core of the primal universe. 1 trillion lights surrounding him, shining upon the entire primal universe and even spreading out beyond to the surroundings of the primal universe. The numerous life forms of the pulse of Earth who lived on the planet nearest to Luo Feng experienced the influence. Every single Earthling, whether in the sunlight or the dark, in the vast land outdoors or the halls indoors, a powerful Earthling who had become an undying or a babbling, newborn infant at that very moment, every single one's head was raised in the direction of the golden light. Nothing material could block the golden light. It transcended time and space, shone into the eye of every living soul, and eventually penetrated into the very soul of every living life form. Within their souls, a lofty golden figure appeared, and they all had a clear view of the face of this figure. This was Luo Feng, whom they most admired. To the Earthlings, who regarded and worshipped Luo Feng as their highest spiritual leader, they were naturally able to recognize him. Even toddlers who might not have known the name of this lofty golden figure would always remember what he looked like in that moment. Upon growing up, after all the memories of childhood had faded, these children would never forget that lofty, golden figure. It's the great, noble Luo Feng. Luo Feng, the hero. The numerous earthlings were greatly taken aback. When the golden light shone upon them and reached deep within their souls, they felt the desire to grovel and kneel before it. It was as though they were seized by a sudden impulse. Whether they were the high and mighty undying fighters or the weak and tender youths, all of them went down on their knees. Within Milky Way Holy Land, 1,000,000,000,000 golden lights enshrouded the region where over 100 universe masters lived. There were even some who were true gods, but regardless of whether they were warriors, servants, or true gods, the golden light enveloped them all and directly penetrated their life imprints. Within their souls, a lofty, golden figure appeared. Respect arose from the depth of their souls. The fundamental distance between different levels of life was the reason why these life forms at lower life levels, in spite of themselves, were compelled to bow and kneel. Yet regardless of whether they were the weakest life forms, meaning those at universe level of Milky Way Holy Land or the superior true gods, none was able to go beyond him. Even the true gods knelt as though seized by an irresistible impulse. They were not kneeling to Luo Feng, per se, but rather, their life origins were kneeling to the birth of the noblest life form. This collective show of respect was an act that was purely instinctual. "It's Luo Feng," said True Yang, also spotting the lofty, golden figure. At this moment, Luo Feng was no longer Luo Feng. He had come to represent the most supreme life form, the greatest and most perfect life form. True Yang was so overwhelmed by his emotions that he could not help but weep. He knew that there was hope for the various races of Universe Ocean because his disciple had survived. There was hope for them all to stem the tide of this calamity. Its Milky Way Horde leader, the numerous universe masters and even the true gods were all greatly shaken. Its teacher, Fire Dome and Luo Feng's other disciples were stunned yet excited. The golden light shone. It shone over 1,000,000,000,000 light years. It shone over the entire primal universe. No one was able to stop it. Even the willpower of the primal universe origin had to temporarily retreat because of the supreme universe law of Universe Ocean. This supreme law enveloped the golden light. Because the golden light contained the supreme laws, it could surpass time and space, as well as all material obstacles. This was how it could make all other life forms kneel before it. Regardless of good or evil, weak or strong, be it Luo Feng's enemy or even his family, Primal Chaos City leader, Peng Gong, Dream Demon ancestor, the many father gods of the automaton race, the few dozen true gods from the entire primal universe all were down on their knees. They were deeply touched from deep within their souls as they knelt. It was not a situation in which they, beings with lower social statuses, were compelled to kneel by one who was above them in social standing. It was more of a way of showing their respect for the greatest life form born under the supreme law. In hundreds of millions of races as well as countless planets, god countries, and universe secret regions, blood and flesh life forms, automaton life forms, plant life forms, energy life forms, all kinds of life forms, the low and the weakest link to the highest and strongest masters, all were showing their respect in their own ways. They were kneeling and groveling, and all these were representative of their life origins showing respect. Gradually, the golden light that had spread over an area of 1,000,000,000,000 light-years dispersed. The supreme law no longer worked any influence over the trillions of life forms. Once again, the willpower of the primal universe origin moved to enshroud the entire universe. The millions and billions of races within the entire primal universe, regardless of whether they were weak or strong, could no longer see the golden light. Everyone was now awakened, but in their souls, their life cause would be eternally imprinted with that lofty golden figure. The true gods of the ancestral god school were gathered at the ancestral god palace. So unbelievable. Even we true gods cannot help but kneel. Cold Whale True God roared in his deep voice. Milky Way Horde leader was merely a universe master previously. Even if he has now begun on his breakthrough to become a true god, we are true gods too. So why is it that even when he is umpteen light years away, we are still kneeling to him as if we have no control over our own bodies? Not to mention you true gods, said the aged ancestral god. Even we three ancestral gods, who have always been favored by the willpower of the origin, had gone down on our knees when the golden light penetrated through time and space to shine upon us. The aged ancestral god shook his head. So ridiculous. So unbelievable. The many true gods, including 9 remoteness true master, found this very difficult to understand. After all, they were true gods. And they all had their own miniature universes. In terms of social status, even the willpower of the origin had to show them due respect. Their orders, once given, were strictly enforced because this was what they were entitled to. Even the willpower of origin was unable to make them fall to their knees and bow down to it. However, just moments ago, regardless of how far apart Luophone was from them, every single one of these true gods of the primal universe had gone down on their knees. What an exaggerated yet unbelievable sight, Double-Face Ancestral God said. It's unquestionable. Milky Way Horde leader must have started his breakthrough to becoming a true god. Yes, he must be starting to transform into a true god. What a commotion, with the entire primal universe bowing down to him. How impressive is his might. It must be an exceptionally unique breakthrough. There was no dissenting opinion among these various true gods of the ancestral god school. Everyone had taken the reason for these exceptional happenings to be Luophone starting to become a true god. Luophone was described as starting to become a true god because there was a process to becoming a true god. First, he had to expand his god country into a miniature universe. Then his godly body had to undergo a breakthrough at the most fundamental level. And these steps, naturally, required some time. The group of true gods from the Space Beast Alliance were all speculating. How did Milky Way Horde leader become a true god? What a commotion he created, bringing the billions of races of the entire primal universe down to their knees so involuntarily. Even if it was the legendary godly power path he had taken, I have seen for myself, when I was in the world of Jinn, the inheritance of the ancient civilization. I do not recall seeing any documented records describing such a scene when one becomes a true god via the godly power route. True. Regardless of law route or godly power route, this situation is unprecedented. They were filled with doubts. What could have happened to Milky Way Horde leader for him to create such a great commotion? Such an occurrence was unheard of. Within the human territory, Void Gold True God said amidst sighs, no wonder Milky Way Horde leader had yet to become a true god all this while. Given his exceptional talent, he would have become a true god in the billionth era. Yet, all this while, he had not. He had merely maintained his status as a universe master and become the #1 master of Universe Ocean. Milky Way Horde leader chose an extremely difficult route, a route that even someone like Milky Way Horde leader, with his exceptional talent, would need to painstakingly cultivate for billions of eras. Today, he finally arrived at the path to breakthrough, and the moment he succeeded, his success reverberated throughout the entire primal universe, where the billions of races fell to their knees before him. Even true gods had to kneel before him. Void Gold True God lauded Luophone's achievement. If Milky Way Horde leader succeeds, all the various races can be hopeful of stemming the Sector Beast crisis. Ha ha! Milky Way Horde leader. His power must be so incredibly profound now. Impressive. Amongst themselves, the humans had long ago placed Luophone on a pedestal, where they looked up to him with high regards. Luophone's breakthrough this time around had such a massive impact that it was soul-awakening. Even the numerous true gods were brought to their knees. Other races may have been a little jealous, but the humans were incomparably excited and thrilled because they belonged to the same race. When Luophone made such a great achievement, they, too, would naturally stand to gain endless benefits. In the future, if Luophone did transcend reincarnation, then the entire human race could exist for eternity. The billions of races within the primal universe were in frantic discussions. The same went for the ordinary life forms on countless planets. They did not know who Luophone was, but that lofty golden figure was imprinted within the core of every living soul. Thus, it was unforgettable. On the other hand, the higher-ups of those races would most certainly be able to recognize that this was the #1 master of Universe Ocean, Milky Way Horde leader Luophone. Milky Way Horde leader has finally achieved a breakthrough. The billions of races from Universe Ocean have hope now. Now, We can be hopeful of pulling through the sector beast crisis. All the weaker races were filled with excitement and anticipation. There was a miniature universe not too far away from the primal universe. It was Sitting Mountain Guest's miniature universe. Sitting Mountain Guest flopped down on the peak of one of the mountains amidst the rolling mountain range. He was a sorry sight, but there was a trace of relief on his face. Almost. Sitting Mountain Guest shook his head while feeling thankful. I almost knelt too. Earlier on, Sitting Mountain Guest had been in his own palace, carving on a piece of rock when the golden light suddenly shrouded his surroundings. At that point, Sitting Mountain Guest's expression had changed drastically, and with great perseverance, he had immediately fled to where a universe channel was. Within his palace, there was a universe channel that connected his palace to his miniature universe. With great difficulty, he had resisted that golden light and made his escape through the universe channel to return to his miniature universe. What is going on? Sitting Mountain Guest frowned as doubts filled his mind. He was shrouded by the golden light, and it had imprinted a lofty, golden figure on his soul. Without question, he was able to recognize his disciple, Luo Feng. What is wrong with Luo Feng? Why is he kicking up such a storm? The ordinary true gods were all unable to put up any resistance and knelt right away. Even for me, if I had stayed a moment longer, I think my will would have submitted to that golden light, too. Sitting Mountain Guest frowned. That golden light does not contain the willpower of the origin, rather, it contains the supreme law. The willpower of the origin did not scare Sitting Mountain Guest at all. The willpower of the origin only had the ability of thoughts. By itself, it did not pose much of a threat. But the supreme law was a totally different story. The supreme law dictated how everything operated within the entire universe ocean, such as why the primal universe forever went through the cycle of destruction and birth, and why there was the birth of sector beasts. Why must the true gods transcend reincarnation after they had finished undergoing 3 reincarnation eras? Everything and anything had to follow the laws. The supreme law did not have any ability of thought, no trace at all. It was merely a set of rules to be adhered to. Yet it was above all else. Luckily, the supreme law was only there to guide the life origin of living souls, Sitting Mountain Guest said to himself. Life forms of the lower class naturally hold great respect for the life forms of the higher class, and they will definitely admire those higher class life forms. The supreme laws merely served to guide and reinforce so that every single life form, including true gods, would obey their instincts and bow before the golden light. Luckily, it's only for guidance. If it were to force us to go down on our knees, even I myself would have to kneel. Sitting Mountain Guest sighed. He was not afraid of the willpower of origin. Because the willpower of the origin was restricted by laws, it had to fulfill the requirements of various regulations and restrictions. But the universe law of universe ocean was different. Even though he had much understanding about a great many secrets, when it came to the supreme law, his understanding was patchy. My disciple. Could it be that he finally achieved his breakthrough? Sitting Mountain Guest was filled with doubts. No doubt, he has taken the godly power route. For such a long time, he did not break through. I suppose he set high targets for himself since he has great ambitions to attain the 3rd level of the godly power route. However, no matter what, the 3rd level of the godly power route should not lead to a commotion of such extent. Even the supreme law has descended to offer its congratulations. Sitting Mountain Guest could tell that this had been a means of congratulating Luo Feng. This achievement was simply incredible, so even the supreme law was here to send its congratulations. Also, it was the cause of the billions of races bowing before him to express their best wishes. Within the solar system in the human territory, all the golden light had dispersed. Luo Feng regained normality. Luo Feng was in a daze. Just now. A moment ago, he had felt as though he had seen every single being in the primal universe, had traversed countless secret grounds, and had every single living soul dropping and kneeling to bow before him. Very quickly, Luo Feng thought no longer. My life gene level. Luo Feng could distinctly feel the fruitful outcome of this breakthrough. Clenching his fist, he could feel the tremors of his godly power. This delighted Luo Feng. At his level, His grasp of control over his strength was extremely precise. Previously, he could even verify that his godly power level had reached up to 89,999 times. That was how high his degree of precision was. 100,000 times. A full whole 100,000 times. No more, no less. My life gene level has actually gone up to 100,000 times. Luo Feng was seriously shocked. God. This was simply unbelievable. The godly body was divided into 3 levels. 30,000 times to 60,000 times constituted the first level. 60,000 times to 90,000 times would be the second level. 90,000 and any limit that was almost 100,000 times constituted the third level. The inheritance of the pulse of Duandong River documented that no one had ever attained a level of 100,000 times. There was also no precedent for anyone achieving 100,000 times within the records of the world of Jin. It was noteworthy that these were records, meaning to say that in the ancient civilization, the pulse of Duandong River, and the world of Jin, no one had ever heard of a being with 100,000 times life gene level. This was only a legend. Even to the ancient civilization, it was only a legend. There had never been anyone who had managed to achieve it. There were no records of it at all. I did it, Luo Feng stammered, in a daze. He mumbled to himself, first, I reached 89,999 times. Then I did a thorough study on the school of universe masters, true gods, and true gods of void space, then on the school of the sector beasts in order to find the commonality between these two schools. Could it be that, throughout the ancient civilization, no universe master was able to achieve this? Right. It seems like in the records of the world of Jin, the records on sector beasts were also legends, and the sector beasts present in the records all seem to have been very powerful. Those were sector beasts in their growth stages. At the moment, Luo Feng did not understand why he could have attained 100,000 times. This was because he lacked exposure to relevant knowledge. After all, even the pulse of Duandong River and the pulse of the world of Jin had never seen any great being who managed to achieve 100,000 times in life gene level via the godly power route. Since no such occurrence had ever been discovered, naturally, the exact cause was unclear. Luo Feng had succeeded, but he could only arrive at some vague speculations to explain his success. Time for my breakthrough. Luo Feng took a stride forward. Immediately, he teleported back to Milky Way Holy Land. Amidst the vast Milky Way Holy Land, high up in the sky above the boundless remote ocean, Luo Feng, who was fully clothed in a white robe, appeared out of nowhere. Boundless remote ocean, recombine. Luo Feng looked down at the remote ocean beneath him. Endless fog instantly rose to surround remote ocean. Thereafter, his life gene level rapidly skyrocketed from 89,999 times to 100,000 times. However, this time, the breakthrough he achieved no longer featured the supreme law appearing to congratulate him. Following this breakthrough, his godly power increased in quality while his body naturally shrank a little from the previous diameter of 12 light-years to a diameter short of 11 light-years. Boundless remote ocean was swallowing like mad. In the vast void space above, the shadow of the ocean of laws of the primal universe started to emerge according to the primal universe law. A tremendous amount of ocean water appeared out of thin air and fell continuously upon the boundless remote ocean. In the past, remote ocean needed to rely on the talent technique creation to automatically recover in order to gradually increase in size. Yet at that moment, it had reached 100,000 times. A limitless godly body, which could absorb to its heart's content. The boundless godly power water descended from high above and meshed with the boundless remote ocean. This caused the remote ocean godly body to continuously increase. At the same time, Luo Feng's remote ocean body, Mosha body, and golden horned beast body, which had been stationed about universe ocean, patrolling the grounds, were rushing back. The moment of the final breakthrough, the various bodies would combine. These other bodies would then dissipate to nothing. If they did not make it back in time, wouldn't the treasures they carried with them be at risk of being lost? This video will end here.